Hello, everyone, and welcome to Twillow Talk. I am Tanis Coughlin from the Twillow Lifestyle Community, Twillow Lifestyle Academy, and I am joined by my beautiful co-host, Jennifer Jurkofsky. What do I do? Let's see what I do. I do Reiki, so I do energy healing stuff. I do channeling stuff. I do Celtic Shamanic High Priestess stuff, card readings, I do stuff. Right? Lots of energy healing and stuff. And Jen, what kind of stuff do you do?
Yeah, well, I guess on the energy side of life, I'm with you on the Reiki and all that kind of stuff. I'm also a registered psychotherapist, certified Canadian counselor, and intuitive life coach. And yeah, there's a whole list of stuff there.
Mm-hmm. And we both have two hats, right? We've got multiple. We both have multiple hats because I do the HR consulting stuff too. So, we do multiple stuff. Yeah. But that's what keeps life interesting, right? Yeah. So we just want to welcome everybody today to our Twillow Talk. And as we usually do, Jen enlightens us with the transits from human design. So where are we at, Jen?
Yeah, well, we're actually getting close to a shift around 5:30 or so tonight, so we're really close.
So what do we see during the show? Cool. Yeah. What's the switch? What are we switching from? Are we going to be all of a sudden a different character or what?
Maybe. What comes up for us, right? So we're going to be shifting into gate 42, the gate of growth. Mm-hmm. This is a really cool gate in that so going back to Gene Keys, because I really love how they use the different parts, right? We've got the shadow, the gift, and the city. And so we're moving from expectation to detachment to celebration, right? Okay. Mm-hmm. So with all growth, we know it doesn't always come easy.
Can be messy.
Yeah. So this week we're really looking at letting go and allowing space for closure, for completion, for things that don't really serve us anymore. Can we allow space to let go? Mm-hmm. Right? And in that letting go, we open the door for more growth and more opportunity. Right? And so even though it's difficult, that closure, that completion is really necessary for us to kind of move into those next steps of our journey. Right? And so we're really entering a time that's allowing space for that.
So how long does this transit last for us then, this transitionary?
Until the 16th, I believe.
Okay. So almost a week.
Yeah, they're all almost. They're never quite a week, but they're around that.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, and so, right, this is really about, can we open? Can we allow for new beginnings? And I mean, so much of the time that we have right now is really about that, about new beginnings. I mean, we're just wrapping through, this one particular holiday is about new beginnings. There's been several that we've had recently that are really about cleansing. Ramadan, right? That's about like that cleansing and all of that. So like we've had between that and Easter and all of that, like
and Ostara and all of those are like that. They're new growth.
We just had a pink full moon, right? Which is again, same idea.
Cleansing.
So things being where they're at, like this is a huge, like, I don't, the image that comes is like, we have spring, but like a spring forward, right? Like
we're springing forward, kind of like the time does in some places around the world. We spring forward in time.
Right. Yeah. But the feeling that comes with it for me is that, if we can let go of all that stuff that weighs us down, it's like propelling us, into that next stage. But we have to be willing to open ourselves and allow space to let go of disappointment, let go of things and people that aren't serving our journey anymore, right? And how do we do that with grace and compassion for ourselves and other, right? But really taking time to, observe the expectations that we're holding and going, okay, is my holding on to this hindering me from my next stage, right? And the detachment, the gift of detachment really comes in is, can I allow space to let go, right? And see what joys then are able to enter into my life. That's where the celebration piece is, right? To really be able to embrace those next steps.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a big topic right now, right? I mean, there is so much going on politically, with systems really. I mean, there's a lot underlying that, like, we don't hear a lot about. I've had a couple of very sort of interesting conversations over the last week or so about things that I didn't know were happening, but people were sharing with me stuff that was, underlying. And of course, I'm not going to get into detail, but the whole sort of the systems, I had no idea kind of where they were at. And we're in a space where the old energies are really going to need to be released for us to move forward.
Yeah, things
And
are breaking down in order to allow room for new.
and
And
it's
that breaking
outgrowth.
down has to happen. Yeah, exactly. But it's
Yeah.
not easy. It's never easy.
It's not comfortable.
That's
right?
it, right?
So it's not usually comfortable because we like to stay the same. We like ordinary. We don't like change. And I'm not even sure why we don't like change. Like it's an interesting kind of topic even, right? I think we've talked about change actually as a topic last year sometime. But it's very difficult for people to see themselves doing something different when we've all been programmed that sometimes change is uncomfortable, and sometimes when we get there, it's not exactly what we expect.
No.
And it doesn't mean that it's bad. It's the expectation that's different, right?
I mean, fear and expectation, ultimately, that's what hinders our openness to change.
Yeah.
But
True.
I mean, change is always happening, right? So the more we're able to kind of embrace that, the more we're able to just go with the flow and allow space for things to be what they are without all of those expectations. And
yep, it's true. It's true. But we have trouble with that.
though,
Just a big hello to Shamina. Hello, Shamina. How's it going, Sham? So we've got, a few people coming on at the moment. So we want to ask you, how do you feel about change?
Yeah. Do we want to do change, or do we want to pull a card? What do we want to do?
Well, we all have trouble with that. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. We all have trouble with that. Well, let's pull a card because I have a feeling we'll have something that'll be sort of
in line.
Yeah. Or something that is there's a connection, I think there'll be something like that. So let's just see what comes up for us. Let's do a card. Good. Okay. All right. That's what we've got. Oh, yep. Big topic today, guys. Judgment.
Oh.
Big topic. And it says, I understand that everyone has their own unique path and challenges. This is so big right now. So, really helping us to release judgment will go a long way to peace in all things, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah. And look at that mandala. It's beautiful.
It is beautiful.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. All right, judgment.
Wow. Well, and it's, I talk about judgment so much in all of with my clients and everything else because so much of our suffering comes from the judgments that we hold about ourselves, about other, across the board, right? Like we talk about the brain and how the brain, it like the left brain specific, it likes to label, it likes to judge, it likes to be able to put everything in its box.
Yeah.
And that process causes so much suffering.
Indeed.
Right.
Yeah. And so let's define judgment a little bit. What does that mean to people? What do you guys think judgment means?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh, thank you. We have a love your hair. Thank you. I don't normally wear it this way on the show. I just, I was, doing stuff before, and I just didn't do that much with my hair. So
hey, it's all good. It looks good.
So thank you if it looks good. And it's Rachel.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I just judged your hair, but that was positive. Yeah, you did. Hilarious. So there's the other thing. So is there a positive and a negative to judgment? And, does it serve a purpose?
Well, I mean, I guess it depends on how far we take it in, right? Like, does it serve us? Can I recognize that I appreciate the way your hair looks and compliment you on it? Does that have to be specifically a judgment? Right.
Is a compliment a judgment? I guess that's the other question.
And, the reality is, I mean, semantically, we could go through and say, yes, and this is why, or no, this is why. But I think even in the meaning there, understanding, like the card said, right? I understand that everyone has their own unique path, and I release judgment on it, or something like that.
I understand that everyone has their own unique path and challenges.
Okay. Yeah. And so in that, I think that when we're talking about judgment specifically with that, it's really about allowing space for things that we don't necessarily agree with in our own process, right? So, yeah, everybody has their own path. And if your path is not my path, that's okay, right? I mean, it's such a huge piece too right now with the transit that we're walking into. The gate of growth is really a lot about that. Sorry, she's just insisting on being on my lap. I keep
we have our mascot here today. So I just pulled up judgment so out of the Merriam-Webster dictionary, and it says the process of forming an opinion or evaluation by discerning and comparing, an option or estimate so formed, the capacity for judging or discernment, and the exercise of this capacity, a formal utterance of an authoritative opinion, a formal decision given by a court, and a proposition stating something believed or asserted.
Yeah.
Yes, we do judge ourselves.
Like it's a statement that we take as a truth that is not necessarily true.
Yes, exactly.
Right? And so, before Robbie decided to join us, this idea of opening for growth and allowing space and releasing that which doesn't serve, a big piece of that is going to be impacted by the judgments that we hold, right? Maybe I'm holding on to this relationship because I think it could be better and the potential is so wonderful. And if only it was this or that, but it's not, right? And so we're holding this judgment around it. Or maybe I just want out because it's so horrible and I hate it, but we're not recognizing the growth that could come from it. Now, I'm not talking about abuse or anything like that, but exactly. In general.
Yeah.
Right. And all of the judgment that I'm holding maybe is keeping me from learning a lesson that would help me grow. Right. So I think a big piece in all of it is, coming back to, and I ask this with my clients all the time, what does it serve? What does believing this, what does feeling this way, what does it do for you?
What are you getting out of it? Right. So we have here from Rachel, depends on perception and point of view. Right. And Shem, we judge ourselves and are so hard on ourselves.
Yeah, we really are. Right.
And absolutely.
even, we do. We judge ourselves. We're hard on ourselves. We can be really mean to ourselves. We can hold on to things because we tell ourselves we have to for this, that, or the other reason. We could walk away from things because we're afraid and think, we're not good enough or we're not worthy or what. I mean, we beat ourselves up pretty regularly and pretty readily. And so really noticing that and working on it. And it really does, like Rachel said, depend on your perception, right? How we choose to perceive something is really within our power, and yet we feel oftentimes like it's outside of our power.
Yeah, I think that is one of the main things. People have difficulty understanding how powerful we are, and that's me included. We when I say people, I mean all of us. Not, that this is not me being people don't understand. It's we all don't understand exactly how powerful we are.
It's us people.
Us people, everybody, right? We're all in that boat. We don't realize, I think, sometimes how powerful our words are, how powerful our thoughts are, and how they actually do work in our lives to create. And we all forget this. We've been programmed to think that we're not. And you just have to start to look around. And I had a conversation with somebody this weekend about, how things are changing from the powers that be being in power to the public being in power, and what that means. And, it came to mind about how, somebody could bring one thing up. We're talking legal stuff right now, but somebody could bring one thing up and bring it forward. And all of a sudden that person is like, their life is completely changed.
Yeah.
Right? Because one person said something. So if you think about how powerful that is, when we use it for the wrong purposes, think about how powerful it would be if we used it for the right purposes.
Right.
Right? So wouldn't that be nice? So Rachel says, trying to be an older version of ourselves sometimes comes up for me. Yeah, we can never be the same person that we were, even yesterday, because we change every time we learn something new. So we learn every day. Every day I learn something new.
Yeah.
I learned how to edit pictures to white today. Jen and I were working on a flyer for a retreat that we're working on. So we learned how to do that today. Yeah. I'm not sure that changes my overall vision of the world, but it was satisfying. So perhaps it changed my vision of myself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and Rachel, for your comment about trying to be an older version, I think sometimes, and I can reflect in my own life where there had been times where I felt very empowered and I felt like, I could do anything and I didn't have limitations. And then shit happens, right? Trauma happens, experiences really weigh us down and cause us to doubt and cause us to think, well, maybe that's not who I am. Right? Abusive relationships, all kinds of gaslighting, whatever it is that, comes in that kind of takes over your way of thinking about yourself.
Yeah.
Right. And then we change and we adapt to that, even if it's not true or doesn't really serve us. And then we kind of have to unlearn that conditioning. Right. And so when we talk about older versions of ourselves, I think it's important that if there is an aspect of a past you that does serve and that you do want to bring forward, to recognize that it's not gone. Right? Those traits within us, if we've had an experience, we can bring that forward. I mean, think about it. We do it all of the time with negative stuff, PTSD and all of that. We relive our traumas over and over and over again. Well, we can relive those powerful things too.
Yeah.
Right? Going right back to that idea of perception and point of vision, right?
Yeah.
What am I looking from? Am I looking from this place of victimhood, or am I looking from a place of strength? Right? Where's my perception? What is guiding me and how I'm perceiving right now? And does that serve me?
Mm-hmm.
right? So if I'm looking at it as, oh, I wish I could be like that. I wish I could be back to the way I was. Oh, it's something now outside of ourselves, right?
There you go, Jen. Maybe you get a new client going on here. Jen is a therapist.
It's my day job.
Yeah. It's one of your hats.
It's one of the hats.
Nah, she's in Canada. Sorry. No TRICARE.
But yeah, so what we do, right, is if instead we can recognize this isn't actually something outside of myself. All of the qualities that I need to be the best version of me, I have inside me at all times. And at any moment, I can connect to that and I can embrace that and bring that forward, right? But it takes that conscious effort, right? In the Gene Keys, when they talk about like the golden path and stuff like that, the whole idea behind it and what they're talking about is, that contemplation where you're bringing in that meditative state, but you're also really focusing or concentrating on the traits the qualities that you have that you want to bring forward, right? So, it's never something we don't have or something outside of ourselves. Because if it is, we're going to always be seeking it. It has to be something that I have, that I'm, unfolding or I'm bringing forward out of myself.
Mm-hmm.
And now it's something that you always have access to.
Yeah. And what's coming to mind for me is, judgment as the comparison. Mm-hmm. So when we compare, we're not doing either party a service because we are all unique. So how do you compare apples and oranges and pears, right? How do you compare those? They're very different. The only thing they have in common is that they're fruit. Mm-hmm. Right? It's the same with humans, absolutely everyone. And it depends on your level of comparison because, you could have a bunch of pears and each one of them is unique.
Mm-hmm. Well, you could have an Asian pear or you could have...
Exactly, or a Bartlett, right? Like there's all different not species. I guess they are called species in fruit, right? Different species.
This is where I go to Dawn, and Dawn tells me about.
Yeah, her partner is very good at this. But there's so many individual things, even with fruit, and we're just like that.
Yeah,
there's no two that are identical. We are all extremely different. So when you try to compare, and yet we seem to find a certain amount of comfort knowing that we're all human.
Yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, and it's such a beautiful thing. And I was going to say with human design, right? Because they talk about the body graph and no two are identical. Mm-hmm. Right. At one point, I remember in one of the groups I was in, they were talking about finding your twin. Right. So they were looking at people who were born really close to when you were born. Right. And so I think I found somebody who was born within like just a couple hours of me. And even our charts were different. Right. Yeah. Like it was such I mean, there were a lot of similarities and stuff. And, seeing like what that person was interested in and how they do, like it was like we're very different people. Right. And so the other piece to all of that is recognizing all of the conditioning that we go through, right? That's the kind of stuff that really, we think we're all this conditioning and we're not.
Yeah, we don't need to. Those are the stories we're telling ourselves or the stories people have told us about ourselves that we're buying into, right? So it's not about that.
Where so much of the judgment comes from too is the conditioning, right? Mm-hmm. We're conditioned to think, okay, well, this is right and that's wrong. This is correct, that is incorrect. This, right? So as long as we can recognize, oh, that's an interesting judgment. Where did that judgment come from? That sounds like my mom, or that sounds like my dad, or that sounds like my whatever.
My third grade teacher, it could be anything. We get those things from anywhere.
Exactly. Oh, that lady at the store when I was 3. That's what, I mean, it literally could
Yeah.
be anywhere.
Yeah, because when we're little, we're like sponges, right? So anything that people say to us, we like just hang on to it because we're learning. The whole point of being little is that we're learning what it's like to be in our society, and your socialization process is learning how to fit in to society, which is important, but right? Rachel says she's still a sponge. No, you're an empath, hun. You're a sponge for energy.
Yeah.
But we all do have the power to create our own opinions about things, right? And judgments. But they don't need to necessarily be a comparison.
No. Well, and the other piece too, right? This idea of being a sponge, it's really interesting, right? Because as a kid, we're still trying to figure out our moral compass. We're still trying to
Right.
figure out what's right and what's wrong, what's acceptable and what isn't. How do I survive this thing called life? Right?
Well, but isn't that what's happening right now?
Well,
Because there's so much change.
Well, that's exactly it. So what ends up happening is, we like to say, oh, well, yeah, that was then, but we're always adapting, we're always changing,
Mm-hmm.
we're always kind of feeling the world around us to see, like, is this safe? Is this okay? Can I do this? What's
Yeah.
going to happen if I do? What's that person going to do? A lot of times we'll project our own stuff on them, and that happens too. But again, right? So how you survive life. Exactly. Because
Mm-hmm.
we get to a place where we recognize I have to adapt in order to survive. Right? And so now our own ability even to judge something, to know what is right or wrong for us, not right or wrong, period, but what is right or wrong for us is hindered.
Right.
Right? Because now it's all about, well, when I'm here, this is what's right and this is what's going to keep me safe. But if I bring that there, that's not going to actually keep me safe. That's going to cause me problems. You can see what ends up happening within us, right? This fight. So if we can begin to come home to ourselves, then we have the opportunity to decide, okay, what really does work for me?
Mm-hmm.
And actually, you know what? If you don't like that, I'm still safe and I don't have to do that in order to make you happy. So
Yeah.
I'm going to open space to be me. And that's okay. Right?
Yeah.
And that's part of the transit right now of recognizing and letting go of what doesn't serve.
Yeah. And I think you said a key piece there. When we make a judgment, is that about good or bad for us? Not in general, because good for me might be bad for you, but we tend to project that.
Yeah.
And think that everybody has to share the same opinion. And that's not the case.
And that's just never going to happen.
No. Where we are all, because we are all so unique, like the pairs, we all have different needs, desires, things that we require to thrive. And so in doing that, we're not going to be the same. We're not going to need the same things. And we're not going to, what's right for one person isn't going to be right for another person. I think that where we fall into some danger is where we try to judge their behavior by our standards. And our standards should only be for us, because our behavior should reflect our own standards. That's that authenticity thing,
Yeah.
So
Exactly.
we have a couple of comments here. So Rachel says, yeah, I've been thinking a lot about this lately. Yeah, it's coming up, right? Because a lot of it is coming up with all of the different things that are happening in politics and all of that. And we have Jennifer Stannard here, who has a long one here. We have to be forgiving too. If we pick up on it from others too, I can correct a thought, but it can take a few seconds. I recognize the purge of diverse conditioning is not the same for all of us. Mindfully subscribing to what negatively feeds us is so important.
Yes.
Unsubscribing, I should say. Unsubscribing is what she said. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and it's so true, right? Because we have these kind of ways that we've learned to be in the world, right? And so, is there another one you wanted to read real quick?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's true. Except if someone is being murdered or attacked based on race, etc. Yeah. I mean, violence. There's no reason for violence. Right? That's all about hate. It's about fear. It's about instilling fear, and that's not okay, right? Violence is not okay because there are random acts of violence. So it doesn't. It just yeah. Someone's who is it that's saying this? Oh, Rachel's saying this reminds me of my ethics course in grad school. Yeah, exactly. That's what it is.
I don't think that it's ever okay to justify aggression, violence, meanness, any of that. I also recognize that some horrible things can happen in our lives. And I can say this from experience. I'm not blowing steam or anything else. We can have some really horrific experiences that can lead us to beautiful growth and openings that we would never have if we didn't go through some of the really tough stuff.
Yeah.
And so I'm not saying that to validate any kind of negativity, any of that kind of stuff. I don't mean it like that at all. But what I do mean is that we can use those things to grow.
Yeah.
And to move forward and to acknowledge this isn't what I want in my life, right? And this is not okay for me. And it's, we have to come to a place too where it's okay. Step back, because what ends up happening is we can sit and judge all of the horrific things in this world. And we can judge all of the murders, and we can judge all of the discrimination. We can judge all of it. What are we doing to do something different?
Yeah.
Right? Because our own fear, our own self preservation, all of that kind of stuff gets in there.
Yeah.
And as much as something can be really horrific, we don't know how we're going to respond in the moment unless we're actually put in it.
Yeah.
Right? So again, taking a look at that judgment piece and going, okay, what does this judgment serve for me right now? And the reality is, if I sit here and I think about all of the horrific things that are happening in the world, knowing that in this moment, there's nothing that I can personally do, I'm disempowering myself to do the things I can do.
Yeah.
Right? But if I recognize that I can bring light and love to everybody that I touch, because that's the choice that I want to make. Now, when I go out there, if I see somebody being discriminated against, I'm not in that fear and judgment place. I'm in that light and love place. And I still don't know what I'll do, because from one minute to the next, I don't think we ever know exactly what we're going to do. But I've held space for a choice that I would like to make.
Yeah.
If I'm in that place. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And and I'm not in any way making excuses by the thing I'm going to say next. But the only way that you can raise negative behavior or that denser, heavier behaviors that are based in fear, the only way you can raise that is by shining light and sending love. So when I think about people that have really made poor choices, what's brought them to make those choices? Because we all have that light within, right? We all have that light within. We've all got the programming. So what programming do they have that have led them to make those choices? And so that's where we each need to do our work.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Oftentimes it is this desperation.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And
or the programming that they don't know that this is going to harm somebody else, right? There may be some lack of learning in there too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's very easy for us, because of the conditioning that we have, to allow ourselves to be in a place of victimhood.
Mm-hmm.
And holding on to the judgments around that. Every time this happens, and this is it, and the universe is against me, and so and so doesn't like me, and it's very easy to take that sadness, that unhappiness, that dissatisfaction, whatever it is, and put it out there.
Mm-hmm.
But in doing so, we don't help ourselves to grow. We don't help ourselves to work through any of it. And we don't help ourselves to get to a place to do something different.
Right. Yeah. Rachel says, I always find crime mysteries so interesting because it's like we're all human. Why do some people do what we deem horrible things, right?
Yeah.
And it's true. There's always a reason why people do what they do. And it doesn't justify necessarily what they do. That's not what I'm saying. But it does help if we can understand it from a perspective of compassion.
Yeah.
Right? So absolutely, there are chemical imbalances that create negative behaviors in people, or denser, behaviors where they affect others in a negative way. Absolutely, there's that. Right?
Yeah.
But each one of us has that light. The more we can choose to see the light in people, in others, no matter what they've done, that's how we become a more loving world. Because I will guarantee you, everybody on here has made a mistake.
Yep.
Many.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And
so the more we can look at those mistakes with compassion and learn from them in ourselves as well as in each of us, the more we bring light and love to the world.
Yeah.
So I don't know where that came from. Sorry, guys, that was channeled.
No, that's good.
So I'm not excusing hurtful behavior in any way. That's not what I'm getting at with that. But there's a tribe in South Africa, I want to say. Not sure if the Dogons. There's a tribe anyway that when somebody does something really bad, and really hurts somebody else. So I'm using the bad term like a judgment. Yes. When somebody does something that hurts somebody else, they don't ostracize them and send them away. They put them in a healing circle.
Mm-hmm.
And they send a whole bunch of love and light and healing energy at that person. Because obviously they're in a lot of pain. So, that's when I heard that, I was like, wow, okay. How does that translate? Right?
Yeah.
And the term justice in terms of the Kabbalistic teachings and that sort of thing, the term justice is it's not about punishment, it's about learning. Yeah. And I think that's what we need to focus on when we're talking about judgments of people, right? Is that really it's all of us just trying to learn and learn our lessons together while we're here. And can we do that and still bring love and compassion to the process of learning?
Yeah, it's so true. Well, when you talk about, justice, and I think back to, restorative justice, right? And what that looks like comparatively to this idea of, making a decision and sentencing somebody and all of that versus really restoring. order back in whatever harmony, right? And whatever that looks like to the best of that ability. You know, and it's interesting as you were talking, what was coming to me, and this is something we've talked about so often, right? Is the Ho'oponopono,
Yes.
right? And Dr. Len, and how he used that to see the true being of the people on the ward that he worked with without ever actually seeing them,
Mm-hmm.
and used that to heal the traumas and, right, all of the desperations and all of the things that were happening for them that caused them to be how they were in the world at that time,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so
The,
we,
the story that Jen's referring to here is the doctor, he was a psychologist or a psychiatrist, I guess, probably, that took a contract in a hospital for the criminally insane. And he was too afraid to go out on the wards. And so he would pull up each person's file, focus on it, and do the Ho'oponopono over their file. That's the story she's referring to that we've spoken about in other ones. But yeah, and it's amazing what a huge difference it made. They had to end up closing the hospital, right? In that story.
well, and the beautiful thing is, again, it's that we could sit there and bring in all of our judgments and be like, yeah, you're a really bad person, and go ahead, tell me about all your horrible stuff that's happened to you, and tell me about all that, right? But it's, again, we're holding space for such heaviness, such disconnection, right? As opposed to holding space for that which we want to see in our experience.
Right. So it's like that, wherever our attention is where attention goes, our energy flows, right? So when we're paying attention to all the negative and the dense and the bad things in somebody, it's like a fulfilling prophecy, right? You're bringing that energy. We're just bringing more of that energy there, more hate, more judgment, more separation. And we're all one. Do we want to feel separation within us?
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing, right? When we talk about energy and holding energy, one of the key things, understanding the connectedness of all beings, is that what we hold space for in the other is what we hold space for within ourselves. So if we're holding judgment for the other, I'm sure if we did like an actual graphing of what this looked like, getting into the behavioral side of life, right? We would look at it and go, oh, yeah, look at that. I spent all day judging that person, and then I was self-judging and looking at myself, and I held so much love today. I felt good about myself. I was doing, right? Because we're what we put out there is what we ask for, right? So recognizing that, we have to be consistent in our own energy in that way. And it's not perfect, and we won't always
No.
be.
We're
But
all going to fall into this once in a while, right? It's as with everything that we learn when we're here. It takes us a few times to figure it out.
a few,
Sometimes more than a few. And that's okay. That's part of the journey, right?
Yeah. And so, as we move into being the observer, it's like, oh, look, there's that judgment. Okay. I see you. I see your judgment. All right. Now what?
Yeah.
Right. It's not that we have to beat ourselves up about it, because you remember, this is the other thing that we do.
Was I talking with an accent? Sometimes that happens when I channel. Almost went into Ireland.
Great.
Never know who's coming through.
But yeah, I mean, it's really easy for us to judge something and then get mad at ourselves for judging something, and then judge ourselves for judging something. And then the
nice
spiral
cycle.
continues.
Nice. And it's one
Right?
of these.
Yeah. Whereas if we can just go, oh, look, there it is.
There it is again. Yep. All right. And we try to catch ourselves a little bit earlier next time. Right? Oh, yeah. I remember I did that. That didn't turn out very well. I guess that's why it didn't turn out well this time. All right. I got to try and notice that a little earlier next time.
Yeah. Well, then the other piece, like you were talking about with kind of the self-fulfilling prophecy piece too, is that we do find what we look for. right?
Right.
So if we hold judgment for something, we're looking constantly for that to be validated,
Mhm. Isn't
right?
that like the reticular activation system or something like? What is that? There's a word for that, a technical word.
Oh, maybe. I don't know.
You know, when you
Technical
buy
words come new to me most of the time.
you buy a red car and then all of a sudden all the cars you see are
Oh,
red. That one. You know? There's a word for that. I don't know.
yeah,
That
I
was
know
a
there's a
term.
word for that, and I don't remember what it is.
Eh,
Uh, but again, the idea is, where our focus is where our experience is, right? And so if we're looking, like, let's say, somebody, every time we see them, they say something to hurt us. So our judgment around it is, this is not a nice person. So now every time we run into them, we're just waiting for them to say something so we can go, yeah, say not nice person, right?
yeah.
Because we get into that perception, that mindset. And if we don't recognize it, if we don't observe it, if we don't go, wow, this is really not serving me, nice person or not, this is not the energy I want in my experience.
Yeah.
We don't ever change it, right? So we have to be able to observe it if we want to move in any direction from it.
Yeah.
Did you
And
look it up over
recognize. I did, yeah.
there?
It's related to the reticular activating system. The reticular activating system is a bundle of nerves that sits in your brain stem, and its job is to regulate behavioral arousal and consciousness and motivation. So
There
it's
you go.
related to that.
Well,
That's
think
the
about that
system.
though, right? Like consciousness and motivation. Wow,
Mhm.
that's a lot.
Indeed.
Right?
Indeed. And that's all in that brainstem.
Yeah. So if we want our consciousness to be on the negative stuff, stay in the judgments and stay in the labeling and stay in those things that, lead to suffering. But if we want to do something different, we have to do something different.
Right. Yeah. And Rachel says, I think the ego is formed sometimes as an armor of fake protection or false protection.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it definitely. I mean, you sometimes see people that are acting fully out of ego and you're like, okay, they're really insecure. And that's when it's like that, right? They're overcompensating or they're projecting so people don't look at them. They want to project it out there so that because they feel insecure, they're not secure in themselves. So that's a lot of self-judgment. They're going through a lot of self-judgment in that case.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and ego is so closely related to judgment, just in that idea of, I know I'm right.
Mm.
Right?
Yeah.
And that's why I love the knowing, not knowing, right? The doing, not doing, all of it. But just that idea of, I don't know. I know for me in this moment, based on my experience, but I also know that that can change.
Mm-hmm.
And so, holding on with a very light grip to our knowing, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's serving me right now, but if the wind blows it away, so be it.
Yeah.
Right?
And that's where compassion comes in. Showing somebody compassion if they change their point of view. Being okay with people changing their mind and not seeing things the same way, whether it's the same as you or the same as they saw it yesterday. Don't we judge people for when they change their mind? Like and yet that's how we go through life because we learn something new and we're like, oh, well then this doesn't really work, does it? Okay. So
Right.
let's get rid of that. Okay, we have this now. And so we change our mind all the time.
Yeah.
Because we learn something new. And yet we judge each other on that.
Mm-hmm.
So many times, you're worried to make the wrong decision.
Yeah.
Because a decision is a
Finality. What?
Yeah.
No, it's not.
So, and yet we all are. We all have that. That fear is instilled in us, from when we're very young. If you make the wrong decision, But we can, when you look at things from the perspective that we look at things, if you make a decision, it's for the reason of it's the decision that you're meant to make in that moment. Because what is meant for us will never pass us by is what I'm getting at. What's meant for us will never pass us by. So even if we make a decision not to do it now, we're still going to get the opportunity again if we are meant to. That's what I'm getting at, right?
Yep.
Yes, exactly, Rachel. Everything is impermanent. And that's where change, because everything is changing all the time. And yet we all sit in our, I'm scared to change.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so true though. And I'm reflecting on so many things in my own story around exactly that, where it was like, I really would like this thing to be this way. And it's like, no, it's not going to be that way right now. And I go, okay, it's not going to be that way right now. And then down the road, all of a sudden it's like, oh, remember that thing here? Like, oh, okay, thank you. I'd forgotten about that thing, but thank you.
It's a divine timing thing, right? It's all divine timing.
Yeah. And we don't know, what's best at any given moment. And so being able to say, oh, okay, I'm getting not now, and that's okay. It's okay to have a not now.
Yeah.
Good try, not yet. Okay, now. Exactly.
Rachel, exactly. Yeah, for sure.
Exactly. And it's interesting too, right? Because I think about it even from, we've talked about this before with like the human design perspective and stuff, right? But understanding our strategy and our authority and how we're supposed to move forward has been such an interesting kind of thing to reflect back on, right? Because as you learn that, you get to go, oh, look at how that played out in this experience in my life. And look at how, this happened or that happened. Like I look at everywhere I've ever lived, I've been invited to. I'm a projector. It's about being recognized and invited. And so, I have not had, a time, I've never had it work out for me where I've pushed to be somewhere and gotten it. It's never worked in my life, right?
It's not your design, right?
It's not my design. And so, as we begin to kind of, again, this idea of, know thyself, as we begin to kind of embrace, we begin to let go. Because we allow space for things to be not what we know, but just as they are. Right? And so, we can look at a situation that's not good. Right? Maybe we're in a situation that we just want to be out of. Right? And then we go, okay, this is really horrible. And maybe it is bad. But then we kind of go, okay, what is my resistance doing? Oh, my resistance isn't allowing me to see possibility. Okay. I have no way to change the situation right now, so I'm going to open to possibility.
Yeah.
Right? And now I go, okay, I can get through this. I am strong enough. I am able to. I'm going to make it through today, and we'll see what tomorrow brings. Right? And now all of a sudden, the heaviness isn't so bad. The situation isn't great. It's still not what we want it to be. And yet, inside, we're allowing space for peace.
Yeah, it gives us hope. Right? So Rachel says sometimes peace is boring. Luckily, there's plenty of problems in life to keep us motivated.
Oh my goodness.
Okay, Rachel, have we talked about this today? Yes, lots of she's laughing, right? We're all joking around.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Yeah, because it's true. I mean, we do have lots of roadblocks that come up that are problematic and that kind of thing. And really, they do motivate us in that way, right? Because we feel, oh, we have this thing happening. How do we change that?
Yeah.
Right? How do we,
Well, then we start like
move that?
problem solver hat on, or
Exactly.
whatever hat on, and away we go.
there's Rachel laughing. Yeah, good. Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
It's so good.
But that's
It's so
it too,
good.
right? And let's go
Yeah.
back to that for a minute, right? Because humor, we talked about humor before.
Mhm.
Humor is so important, and it diffuses
It does.
situation big time, right? So when I talk about that idea of how do we, release that judgment, how do we release our resistance? Sometimes we have to just laugh at ourselves.
Laugh at ourselves. That's key, right? Not laugh at others. That's judgment. Laugh at ourselves in a way that it's like it's a laugh with others as opposed to at others, right?
Yeah.
Not at their expense, but with them.
No.
Yeah.
No. But it is an important piece, and being able to recognize too, like, you're joking and all, but it is so bang on too.
It is, yeah.
If everything was fine and we were never challenged, we'd never grow.
Exactly.
We'd never change. We'd never evolve.
Stagnant.
Right? And so there's nothing in that that's serving us. Right? So yeah, problems are important. Just like having, restriction around us is important.
Yeah.
Right? We allow ourselves space to kind of go, okay, this is a rule, this is a restriction, this is something I have to follow. This doesn't feel good. Okay, now what?
Yeah.
Right?
What else is possible?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it takes
Exactly.
it takes something not being okay for us to get to a place of going, okay, now what?
Yeah. Yeah. Because we won't necessarily ask it because we're comfy in a space and we don't want to.
No, if everything was fine, it would be like, now what? I'm so bored. Now what do I do?
Exactly. I mean,
Nothing to do.
Rachel is right in that sense, right?
Right? Yeah.
We can do it for a little bit, and sometimes, because I always say, we want to kind of put ourselves out a little bit to learn, and then be comfy again for a little bit, right? So you put yourself out a little bit, then you come back and be comfy.
Well,
put yourself out, and eventually you realize that you're like, and you've done all of this, right? Yeah. Rachel says that's what I meant. Yes. I was teasing you a little bit, sorry. But yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, yeah. I mean, we talked about this, I bet maybe just a couple things before, but the whole, like, how do lobsters grow, right? Like, we have to go through discomfort in order to grow.
Yeah.
Right? And we all do. Nobody, doesn't get to have discomfort in life.
No, just like none of us get out of it alive. None of us get out of here alive.
None of us get out alive anyway.
Okay. There's some certainty in life. The beginning and the end are certain.
Yeah. But if we can take the time to recognize and observe what comes up and just allow space for it without judgment, golly, there's so many things that can come from that, right?
Absolutely. And like Shem says, just like the caterpillar. Yeah. Turning into goo.
As an example. Yeah. And it's such a beautiful thing. And, it's in my logo. So I love the whole, like, thing behind it. Right? Because everything that we need to be the butterfly is within the caterpillar. But the caterpillar has to completely dissolve in order to make room for the butterfly to emerge. And how true that is for our own experience. Yeah. Right? That dissolving of the ego, that dying before you die, that ability to look at our shadow and be okay with it, and work with it and understand it, and also that we can move through it and bring out these other qualities. Like, it's such a beautiful symbol. So thank you for bringing it up.
Absolutely. Turning into a beautiful butterfly, Shem said, and Rachel says it's a perfect symbol of spring. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which this is where we're at. We are at spring. We are at a new transit, bringing in transitions and new beginnings.
Yeah.
And it would be lovely if we could all look at transition in a positive way. You know, that would be my love for everyone, is for all of us to be able to, and I'm guilty too, guys, like, you know, all of us to be able to look at transition and stuff and feel good about it and feel excited about new stuff, you know, instead of having so much grief and heaviness for the loss of whatever was, you know. So yeah, follow the positivity, folks, in all change. And we will all try to do that going forward. And it brings us to the end of our hour. So we want to thank you all for joining us for this awesome conversation
Thank you
about
all.
judgment and many other things in between. So, so we're wishing you all tons of love for your new beginnings, for new spring, this new transition with human design and in the transits. Happy Easter to those of you that celebrate Easter, and happy new beginnings. Lots of love. I'm Tanis from the Twillow Lifestyle Community, Twillow Lifestyle Academy, and you can find me at these guys down here. And Jen, where can we find you?
Jurkofsky. You can find me at Twillow. You can also find me at myholisticself.com or myholisticselfcounseling.com. And look forward to sharing with you all again next Monday.
Yeah, we'll see you next Monday. We have a guest. Yeah, we have Gerald from Tarot Stash.
Tarot Stash,
I believe.
So
yes, Tarot Stash will be in the house. So we're looking
forward
to having.
My tiara.
Oh yeah, I got to find my crown.
I got to find that. Okay.
So stay tuned for next week. We will have crowns and a guest on Twillow Talk next week. And thank you, Rachel, for your lovely compliment. It was great. Thank you all again for sharing your energy. And we shall see you next week. Have an awesome week, everyone. Lots of love.